Imagine this scenario. You're out there somewhere. You're on a street corner, you're in an alley, or you're in a really chill spot. Or you're simply just at home and you're sitting right in front of your black book. And you just got done hitting up and you're looking at your tag and you get a funny feeling. This is a name that you've put time and effort into, but despite your time and your effort, you find yourself asking a question. And this question is, should I change my graffiti name? And worse, you find yourself asking this question more and more often. And if you found yourself asking these questions, you might be wondering what to do. And while each individual situation is different, I can tell you guys what I did in the 90s when I faced this question. And I can say if somebody's asking themselves this question of, should I change my name? There might be a couple of reasons to do so. And in my own personal experience and what I've seen around the way from other writers, I can tell you the most common reason somebody changes their name is that they think it's whack. And while this might seem like a great reason to change your name, the situation might not be that straightforward. But there might be other reasons for you changing your name that are less complicated. At the very top of the list for changing your name is some other writer in your area is already writing it. I've spoken on this specific issue before on TikTok, so I won't get super in-depth here. But I will say back in the day, anytime one of these situations popped up, it was usually the people around you that would let you know you were in the wrong. And they would tell you, hey, that name's taken already, and even if you already hit up a bunch of different times, they would advise you to stop writing it. But they would only really do this if they knew that this other writer had the name first. And if they weren't so sure, they might reach out to that writer themselves or somebody that knew that writer and find out who was doing what when. And if it turned out that you wrote the name first, you got to keep it. I've also heard that in other scenes, these two writers might end up battling for this name, and whoever gets up the most gets to keep it. But if you yourself or your people found out that you had this name second, you were expected to drop it as soon as possible. And if you didn't drop this name and you continued writing it, you were gonna get hit with a really ugly label. And this label was biter. And while somebody else already having your name was a great reason to change your name, there was an even better reason out there. And that was you got arrested for graffiti and your name was now on file. Within the first 6 months of me writing, almost every single person that I wrote with was in this situation. And while ultimately the majority of these people that got busted fell back and then just fell off, some of the other people that got busted stayed in the mix. But when they would write, they would utilize a secondary or under name. These were temporary names that these writers utilized while they had heat on them or while they were on probation. And as soon as they were off probation and they had less heat on them and less scrutiny, they just went back to writing their original names. And in the 90s, with the cops in San Francisco not having information centralized, with cop stations not really working together and things being very autonomous, this was the best way for you to stay up, stay active, and stay under the radar. But there are writers in the scene, including people that I knew personally, that didn't even bother. And despite them getting busted multiple times, despite them being investigated, the cops putting cases on them and surveilling them, they still wrote what they wrote. And some of these writers still write it to this day. And while back in my day, these might have been the best reasons for writers to change their names, the most common reasons why writers did change their names is because they thought their names sucked. And this was definitely the case for me when I changed my first and my third name. The first name I ever wrote was Zero, which I abbreviated to ZR. I had this name picked out before the first time I ever hit up. And given that naturally I'd never tagged before, I didn't know anything about graff, I didn't know anything about style, especially when I hit this name up, I wrote it in some regular letters. Not that long afterwards, the people around me gave me some feedback that I was gonna have to figure this name out and apply some style to it. When I first tried to apply some style to this name, the style that I applied to it was one I created. And unless you're a savant, unless you're something like the Mozart of graffiti, any style that you create as a new writer is gonna be garbage. Naturally, this style was garbage, and I was adding a lot of crap onto my tag that didn't need to be there. Curly cues, accent marks, quotation marks, crowns, anything to get you to not look at the letters. And when I got serious about doing this name in the bus flow style, hitting up one flows with this name, it improved, but not by much. But I can say in retrospect, I was probably always gonna be pretty biased towards the name Zero. It was my first name and it was done in a really whack fashion, and I got a lot of feedback from people about how whack it was. And most likely I was always gonna consider it whack no matter how it looked. But I didn't necessarily have this negative baggage associated with my third name. This name was Pore, which was spelled P-O-R-E, and I started writing it about a year after I got into graff. From the time I started writing this name to the time I stopped, I only did one flows, and I hit up one flows with this name daily. And pretty much from the jump, I didn't like the name and I didn't like how it looked. And similar to when I was hitting up zero, I would hit up pour on somewhere, usually on a bus, and be kind of bummed out after. And when I'd look at my name, I would find all the different components about the name that I didn't like. In the bus flow style, connectors, those transition points in between your letters, play a huge role in shaping how your tag looks. And in writing this name pour, I had 3 different transition points that I had to worry about. And when the bus flow style was created, it was formulated for the purpose of allowing writers to hit up on a moving bus as fast as possible. But I always found when I was hitting up this name as fast as possible, those transition points were always really sloppy. And especially the transition point between the O and the R really bothered me. And to be real with you guys, when I would see this name, that transition point specifically looked like whoever did it had gotten faded beforehand. And they just got on a bus super wasted and were just scribbling on the bus in a very sloppy manner, and I really didn't like that that's how my tag looked. Worse, the people around me, especially the people around me that I respected, like the homeboy Sins, let me know that they didn't like it either. And when you have people around you that you respect that are dope in their own right or just outright dope period, and they let you know that something's whack, it's not a bad idea to listen. But ultimately, the writer that you need to listen to is yourself, and you need to determine if this is how you really feel. And when I first started writing this name, I didn't feel the same way that the homeboy Sins did, that Bubbles did, or some of the other people that I looked up to. I didn't really take anything that they had to say into consideration. And that's because I knew that this name was new and I was still in the process of figuring it out. And to any writer out there who's struggling with a new name, my immediate recommendation would be to keep writing it. And this is especially true for the people who are just new to graff, period. If you're in your first year as a writer, chances are every single thing that you do is gonna be whack, and any name that you write might be whack anyway. And becoming less whack at graffiti is a long process that takes a lot of work. And you're gonna have to try different things and different variations, different little add-ons, different additions until something clicks. And once you have something you like, you need to take this one thing that you like and try to reproduce it every single time. The only way you're gonna be able to do this is by practicing and practicing incessantly. And not only are you gonna have to practice this tag at home in a sketchbook, on a piece of paper or whatever, but you're gonna have to go outside and practice this name too. And in doing all this over the span of a few months, you should find the answers that you're looking for. However, this isn't always the case and it's far from a guaranteed outcome. And you might find after 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, this tag is still whack. And while it might be less whack than when you started out, you still might not be happy and you might want to move on to something else. And I would tell you guys, this is a great time to pick a new name. But even if you pick a new name, you're still gonna have to take other things into consideration. And the progress that you've made out in the streets and how up you are for sure needs to be considered. And even if your name isn't the greatest or done in the greatest fashion, you still might have accumulated some respect. You might have gotten some recognition for what you're doing, and you're gonna lose all this progress that you've made having to start at square one. This definitely was the case for me when I stopped writing pour and started writing harm. But to be honest, I was so ready to leave this name behind and so happy to be writing harm that any other consideration, especially how up I was, didn't enter my mind. And I was really just happy now that my name looked exactly how I wanted it to. The letter selection in the name was perfect for me. It was all letters I was very comfortable using, and all those connecting points in my tag all lined up. But most importantly, when I looked at this name myself, I was happy with it. And when other people looked at it, they were happy with it too, and that was a bonus. But I was only able to come to this determination after exhausting all of my options when it came to pour. And at the end of the day, if you're gonna throw away all your progress, all this work that you've done to put this name out there, you have to understand that when you're doing this, it's because there's nothing else you can do. It's just time to retire this name and write something new.